and strategies for helping other people that you love or care about or are the therapist for. So who is my one person? Can you chat? Can you chat me a hi? Oh, I left. Okay. So here is the first question. How does psychosis feel? Psychosis is a kind of bucket phrase in psychology. It's not a term like borderline personality disorder that has a specific referent. It refers to any time that a person's subjective reality differs from objective reality, by which I mean either people are hallucinating or witnessing things nobody else can see or hear. And I leave both those options open because of my own experience, extensive experience with seeing and hearing things people around me don't. Psychosis, how to tell the difference between when you're having a psychotic experience or when an experience is part of the objective reality that the people around you share. Hi, Doc. Thank you for coming. How to tell the difference between how does being in psychosis feel different from not being in psychosis? There's a little bit wrong with that phraseology because to be in psychosis sounds like you're lost in the sea. And that happens. There's no question that at times we fall into or fly into an entirely different deictic state. So that's a linguistic term that means like a different frame of reference. So when you're in psychosis, your frame of reference, your deictic state, is not reflective of the objective reality around you. That's kind of what it's defined as. So another way of thinking about deixis, there's temporal deixis, which is now and then. Hi, Rajali. And there's spatial deixis, which is here and there. So it's the meaning of the word is defined in reference to something external to the word, like now or wherever you are, location. When you go through psychotic features, especially when you're lost in the sea of psychosis, your deictic frame is very different from the frame of everybody around you. Hi, Sunidhi. Hi, Raja. And I have no clue how to pronounce that beautiful Korean name. So how do you tell? Like a humongous coping skill for dealing with psychosis, like the number one skill that has allowed me to get an undergraduate in cognitive psychology, a graduate in cognitive science and endangered language linguistics, and to be able to have 2 children and just basically to be able to continuously engage in the external world. The primary skill, and this is what the spirits told me when they were telling me how to navigate both worlds, they said, see what you see and look at what they see. So I think for most people, I'm fairly certain, although I haven't polled everyone on Earth, most people who experience symptoms that or experience things that the people around them don't experience can tell. There's a different feeling to it, like a different timbre. So the timbre of an instrument is how you can tell a guitar is different from a piano. That's the timbre. It's kind of like the voice. And an experience has a certain timbre. Like when you go home and you play with your kids and you're not thinking about work and you're not thinking about making sure that the spreadsheet of all your bills adds up in a good way. Hi, Jet. then that experience has a certain timbre. When you're focusing on synthesizing ideas that you've gathered from a lot of different places into making new ideas, that's a different timbre. And with psychosis, there's really a very different feel for me. Like I can't speak for a single other person. That's the other thing about psychosis, that I can't call it for anyone else. There are different basic types of psychosis. Like there are different buckets that an experience can fall into. So there's ecstatic, where we're talking about like Joan of Arc, the visions and the spirits, the one that visited Mary to tell her to name her kid Jesus. Like there are the paranormal experiences, as I understand it, are represented in our neurology by states that are equivalent to what today we would call psychotic experiences. In the book by C.S. Lewis, I think it's the fourth book of the Chronicles of Narnia, one of the kids, whose name is Eustace, he's in Narnia and he's talking to a star. And he says, "What is a star?" Or no, he says, "In my world, a star is just a big ball of gas." And the star tells Eustace, "No, Eustace, in your world, a big ball of gas is just what a star is made of. It's not what a star is." So if you think about mystical experiences, they are mystical experiences. Like they're legit, they count. But what they're made of physiologically comes down to neurotransmitters and neuronal activation. It has to, because that's how our brains give us the experience of continuous identity. That's how our brains give us the experience of the world. So to that end, I, in graduate school, was going to get a master's degree. I wanted to get a PhD in cognitive psychology, specifically targeting the interface between chemicals and consciousness. So neuropsychology is the word for that. Because what fascinates me the most is that somehow, so this is coffee and I had some protein drink earlier. Somehow, through some chemical alchemy, that coffee and protein drink get alchemized in my brain to become concepts and the illusion of continuous identity, which is a really complex illusion for your neurons to carry out. And somehow I am trading these concepts with your brain, which is also made probably at the moment of Cheerios and milk or whatever. I don't know where you're visiting me from. That's why I got into graduate school. But just to go way, way, way back to the beginning of saying this, I have these fantastic questions here. How can you tell a hallucination from reality? And that's from Doc's Ponderings. So thank you so much for that question. They feel different. That's where the timbre started. Mine are very easy to tell. What I see is very easy to tell from what I look at from the spirit's advice. Because for me, I have extremely strong internal imagery, and that's how the translucencies appear to me. And those are the psychotic symptoms that I have been navigating since before I can remember. But the earliest documented one was when I was 7. I watched Jesus and Satan come onto the stage where my father was preaching at a church and alternate putting their hands on his head. And I was terrified by it and I was crying. And the only way that I know that it happened is that my father was really concerned about why his 7-year-old was in terror in the front seat of the church while he preached. But so I see them, and they're like fully formed external images. I have a dragon down here with me who has big orange red eyes and is like this iridescent green purple color. I haven't named her though. I should do that. But I know that she's not the same as the objective reality everyone else shares, because she's not there. Like, she's not there. She's there for me, but she's not. I don't see her the way I see my hand or my phone. The thought voices that I have when the spirits talk to me, that one's a little harder to tell, because they talk to me in my own voice. I have really fantastic visual imagery, the ability to visualize, like a lucid dream. Usually the translucencies are like a lucid dream, so I'm not controlling their movements, I'm witnessing them. Whereas with the thought voices, they sound just like me. Like, I can't hear timbre in my mind. So when I try to imagine the sound of a guitar, and I imagine the sound of a piano, and I imagine the sound of a singer, like literally all my brain can get is like do 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 do, like in a human voice. So I can't imagine sounds. So that means that when spirits talk to me, or when I have auditory hallucinations, according to how you want to look at it, I can't tell. It's very difficult to tell if it's me, or if it's coming from my mind, or if it's coming from an external source, because I can't get under it, right? Like, it sounds like me. The way that what does happen though is sometimes I'll be thinking along, and then all of a sudden the voice will cut into my thoughts. So I'll be halfway through a sentence, and a spirit or hallucination will cut into that. The reason that I so easily can interchange the words spirit and hallucination is that I have spent 30 years, like 30 fucking years, fighting myself over which one it is. Because, if you're talking to spirits, then yay, you're a shaman, you're special. And if you're hallucinating, then fuck, right? You're crazy. And so I kept trying to figure out which one it was. Then I would tell myself it was one of them, and then I would have evidence that it wasn't. But what I finally realized is it makes no difference in my actual life. Like, it doesn't matter which one it is, because it has the same impact in my world. And that impact is I listen to what they have to say. And I enjoy their company when I'm alone. And I am extremely blessed in that I think about 11 of the 12 psychoses, and when I say psychosis as a noun that way, I mean jumped into the sea of God, like truly abandoned myself to psychosis. Only one has been nightmarish. I think most people who deal with psychotic symptoms have a lot more distress over it than I do. I've never had a lot of fear. Usually they're angels. Usually it's they're spirits. They're friendly. They're loving. I honestly don't believe in evil. Like, I live in a world without evil. For me, there's as it happens, the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu managed to get together and write a book called The Book of Joy. And in it, they talk about how basic human nature, instead of being violent and territorial and angry like everybody thinks it is, basic human nature is, yeah, sure, I'll send some money to the hurricane victims in Haiti that I'll never meet and whose children don't carry on my genes. Like, basically, we want to help strangers if strangers are suffering, because basic human nature is loving. And that's what I hold on to. I mean, it's not a belief. That's how I understand reality to be. That cruelty, hurt people, but healed people, heal people. And it goes on. And then you can jump into the problem of pain, which is the formal term in Christian apologetics, which means the field of explaining why doctrine and theology are what they are. Another C.S. Lewis thing, the problem of pain. How can you imagine that there's a divine sentience that is benevolent and omniscient if people suffer? Especially if an 8-year-old gets incested and a 15-year-old gets raped, which is what happened to me. 17-year-old gets tied down for 13 hours, and I was 100% Christian and 100% loved God. How could God be loving if he then did or allowed those horrible things to happen to me? And I have a video on that, which is like something about what happens after we die. That's the one. It's where I'm walking through a graveyard talking to spirits. And the spirits are telling me that the answer to the problem of pain is that in between lives, when we're looking at what we can learn with the next one, the more intense the lesson is, the brighter the candy is in the candy store. So bright red suffering, like electric blue, ecstasy, loneliness and pain and grief and death are all just these colors of candied experiences that we decide we want to have before we jump into our next lifetime. And I could go on for like 9 years, but okay, so that one is, how can you tell a hallucination from reality? It feels different, usually. Delusions are a form of hallucination, and the way to tell delusions from reality is much harder. What can you do? How can family members help ground someone who is hallucinating? I really love that question. Family members and friends. And by the way, you guys, the interesting thing about this is questions that you ask. So if any of you want to ask me a question, I'll jump immediately to that. I can only speak for myself about what helps. There are 2 things people said to me that have really helped. And the first one was thank you for staying alive. Just thank you for not killing yourself, because if you tell someone thank you for not killing yourself, you are acknowledging what a fight it is. And I think a lot of people who haven't had to deal with real active suicidality just don't know that it's a tractor beam, that it takes real effort to not slice yourself up or kill yourself. Self-harm and suicidality sound like they're a similar thing, but in fact they're not. Hi, Andrew. If you think of anything, let me know. Anything about anything? Anything psychotic? So the most helpful thing anybody said was thank you for staying alive. And then the next really helpful thing was when someone realized that when he tried to convince me of something, then my response, I was hospitalized for suicidal depression. My response was to reiterate all my reasons for why I believed what I believe, which makes sense. Someone attacks you, you defend. Okay, don't do that, because all you're doing is exactly what you're intending not to do. All you're doing is entrenching. You're getting the person to rehearse again their delusion or their reasons for wanting to kill themselves or whatever it is. Don't do that. When I had babies who were sucking on pacifiers, I read, actually mine never did, mine only did boob, but I read that if you want a baby, if the baby keeps spitting a pacifier out of its mouth and you want it to keep it in its mouth, the original, like most people, will just put the pacifier in the baby's mouth and tuck it in there, right? And hope the baby learns to keep it in there themselves. Not gonna work. What you do when the baby has the pacifier in their mouth, you flick it in the corner and you try to take it out, Because when you try to take it out, the baby will suck it back in. And that way the baby's muscles learn how to keep the pacifier in. It's the same thing with psychological suffering, that you want to play. It's called motivational interviewing. If you Google motivational interviewing, it'll teach you the strategy that therapists use. I know this because I was a peer support specialist at Mental Health Partners in Colorado for 1.5 years, and I taught group therapy, 3 different types of group therapy for 1.5 years. And I counseled people. And motivational interviewing is a way of phrasing your thoughts to encourage the person to say things that will move them toward healthy decisions. So when you ask, what can friends and family do that is helpful for someone in psychosis, that's actually a really succinct answer. Google motivational interviewing. And when you talk to them, remember that people, and all therapists know this because you get taught this when you're getting your licensure, people don't change according to what the therapist says. They don't change based on what they hear mom say or what they hear their bestie say. We change because of what we say. A person changes based on what they hear themselves say. So the most helpful thing you can do is sit back for a minute and think. Okay, if someone is in a meth-induced psychosis, psychoses are absolute living hell. Then you can't say, it's unwise to say, what you're talking about is not real. No one is poisoning the medication that you need to take to stop being psychotic. There are no demons in the corner of the room. The thing to do is to take compassion, because if you are compassionate without invalidating their reality, then they don't need to defend their reality, and they know that it's safe to tell you. So it helps you with making a long-term relationship. And that's what you really need. You really need that trust. So compassion then, man, wow, there's a demon in the room with you? That must be so scary. If I could see a demon in the room with me, I would be terrified too. If I felt, when a lot of people get it's called a tactile hallucination of ants, bugs crawling all over them, with different kinds of substances, or when people are getting off alcohol, and it's a horrible feeling. It's really, really creepy and awful. And it's just a skin hallucination. It's a tactile hallucination. But if someone is like rocking back and forth crying because there's bugs all over them and they can't stand it, then saying there aren't bugs all over you, they're going to say, yeah, there fucking are. I can feel them everywhere. So it's for you to remember that in that person's reality, there are terribly scary bugs crawling all over them. And then how would you react? What is the kindest, most compassionate, empathetic thing that you can think to say in the moment? Like, I'm so sorry you're going through that. How can I help? Does it help if you have a stuffed animal to rub against your skin? Does it help if I press down a little bit on it? Does that change the sensation? How about if we listen to music and you pay attention, and then you could have them pay attention to other senses in their body, so that the, afferent nerves, all of the nerves that are going into the brain, and the efferent that are coming out of the central nervous system have something else to talk about other than the hallucination. Okay, so that question was, how can family members help ground someone who is hallucinating? In hindsight, how do you feel about the people who forced you into involuntary hospitalization? Gentle distraction. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's a great way to phrase how to help someone. And if it's and really an empathy, totally. And that's the man, if I were seeing that, demon, I would be fucking scared as shit, because then the person feels validated. And with the gentle distraction, you can do physical, you can do, if they don't want to be touched, you can do imaginal. So let's exhale and think about what is the quietest place you've ever been. Because remember, it's not you saying it and them hearing it that makes a difference. It's them saying it. So that's what you're aiming for. Motivational interviewing. The way that I feel now about the people who locked me up is I'm incredibly grateful. I wanted to just kill them in a really bloody, horrible way. And now I can see that they were taking care of me when I was in an incredibly vulnerable state. And it was an act of love. Absolutely. So I'm very grateful. If you have a child who is in psychosis, who is not admitting it, who is running away, I 100% recommend having, even if it's involuntary, doesn't matter, having them put hospitalized for a 72-hour hold so they can be observed to see if it needs to last longer. The criteria for being hospitalized on short order like that is a person has to be an immediate threat to themselves or others. So an immediate threat to oneself can be when one's internal reality has deviated so far from external reality that that person can't keep themselves safe anymore. So when the first overflowing of the soul, which is the Greek translation of psychosis, the first overflowing of the soul that I went through, I was 17. And I went dancing in the park dressed in nothing but a sheet, dancing enthusiastically. I ran away. I decided in my mind that Jesus was a beggar, since he was not understanding that in rabbinical theology, the rabbi is kind of doing a job that everybody takes care of him for. I decided he was a beggar, so I decided to go be a beggar. And my decisions were really, I was putting myself in danger. And so it was right for them to hospitalize me to keep me safe. So if you love someone who is a danger to themselves or others, then it's an act of love to hospitalize them. If your cosmology jives with their psychosis, then you need to be very humble about and conservative about your decision whether or not they need help. So if you believe that demons do exist and that someone has cursed your family or your loved one and that the demons are coming after them, then look at it from the point of view of how much distress is this person in, whether or not the demons and angels are real. For me, angels are real, but demons aren't. How much distress they're in is what dictates whether or not you need to get them help. And if they say they feel totally safe, and then they say demons are poisoning my medication, if they say I don't want to hurt myself, and then they say I can't handle being alive anymore, the things that they are saying are, we learn how to audition for sanity really well. That's a skill that comes with having a mental disorder in the United States these days. You learn how to audition for sanity because once people decide you're insane, they treat you very, very, very differently. So to be able to say the things that will make other people feel more comfortable and hide the reality of the extreme experience you're going through is that's what we're going to do. If a person doesn't want to be hospitalized or put in a treatment center, they're going to say they're not going to hurt themselves. They're going to say they feel safe, even though their distress is so great that they're not leaving their house or they're not functioning. Okay. What stuff did not work when I was in psychosis? The only thing I can remember that super ultra didn't work is when someone told me that my experience wasn't real. That's the only thing. I was 17. I was in the first psychosis, and in my first overflowing of the soul, nobody had any clue what was happening. I was raised in in my experience that it fit the definition of a cult, but it was a form of extremist Christianity where they would do demonic manifestations, and that's what I was told my problem was demonic possession, which is not a helpful thing to tell someone who's trying to get their brain around how they're witnessing things that physics deems impossible. Now I totally can't remember what I was saying. Oh, okay. So the person who told me something wasn't real, so I flipped into an ecstatic state from a very, very short, scary psychosis. I flipped into an ecstatic state where I was part of God, and it was like, man, how do you say it? Religious, ecstatic overflowing of the soul. Go from stinging consciousness to divine union. And life is like a great big ripe juicy peach, and you get to just bite right into it. It's like being the star of a movie. It feels more real than reality feels. And I felt completely without boundary. So every single thought I had, every question I could think, I immediately knew the answer. And there was no way to lie because everything was known, because my mind and spirit were part of the whole. And I felt the most amazing feeling that I have ever felt in my life, which is I felt like sun was shining on all of the secret dark parts of my soul, all of my secrets and things I was ashamed of. Everything was seen. Everything was known. Every choice I'd ever made that I felt guilty for, everything was known. Everything was understood completely. Like, yeah, it like normalized my conviction of my own sickness, or it made everything, it was just all understood, known, seen, known, understood. And here's the kicker: found precious in every detail. Like, and to be hugging someone who finds you precious in every detail, and to feel that deeply, that love and God and understanding, Zorla, which is my name for the force that everything is made of, that love that constitutes everything, the thing that makes up this phone I'm talking to in my fingers. Oh, I'm sad to see you go, Doc. Thank you for joining, and thank you for commenting. If anybody else wants to comment, it does make this more interesting than a continuous monologue. What was I saying? Oh, it felt completely amazing and very healing. And 30 years later, when I was talking to an elder of the Northern Arapaho tribe, ceremonial elder named Crawford White Eagle, who is my dad, my adoptive dad there, after I became a linguist on Wind River Indian Reservation. He had died several times and chose to come back. His heart had stopped medically, scientifically, and he died and chose to come back. And when I told him my experience of that first overflowing of the soul, he was like, yeah, you were there. That's what it's like when you die. And I was like, yes, knew it. So when people often want to go back into psychosis, people who have ecstatic psychoses, it feels amazing. Why wouldn't you want to go back into it? Continuous psychotic symptoms, does that mean continuous distress? No. For me, it means I always have somebody to talk to. And I have I see fun things. I see tons of Native Americans and deer, and they catch my attention. Like when I'm hiking, I can see the little Native kids rolling hoops around the ground, and the women beating out the, hanging the dry meat and all that, teepees and stuff. So no, continuous psychotic symptoms for me are not distressful. They actually make my life a lot better. The important thing is being able to distinguish, as I said before, being able to see what I see and look at what others see. So being able to distinguish between the subjective reality and the objective reality, the private reality and the shared reality. It's critical to be able to distinguish between those things, and to, in my experience, acknowledge the reality of both without crippling my logic or the things that allow me to function. And that's the real kicker, is that after you go through an ecstatic psychosis, and then you come back to peanut butter and jelly reality, where you're not the center of the great movie like you just were, what makes that worth it? Especially if you're caught in a tractor beam of self-harm, what makes that worth it? And the answer is relationship. Psychosis is a tempest in a universe of one, a tempest of creation in a universe of one. And it feels really fucking amazing, but it's a universe of one. So being able to have a husband and children and friends, this is what we're here for. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. Connection is what we're here for. It's what we carry on from our last life and into our next life, and it's what gives us meaning. And when that psychotic heaven, or the palace that we get to design for ourselves that feels so amazing, doesn't allow connection, and that's why it's worth it for me to do everything I do to stay here. I do a lot. That's another question that I haven't gotten to yet, and that's coping mechanisms. Holy fucking shit, do I have a lot of coping mechanisms. Probably the most important one is I take medication very regularly, and my whole perspective around medication has completely changed over time. So I've been on meds since I tried to kill myself when I was 17. So I turned 50 in 30 days, which makes that 33 years. So I've been on all sorts of medications, and I've done electroconvulsive therapy, 2 rounds of it, 4 months each, to stop the suicidality. At first, I thought, as most people do, that the medication was trying to dumb me down so society could handle my brilliance. It was taking me away from myself in order to serve everybody else. And under that framework, who's going to want to be medicated? It doesn't make any sense. What I have discovered over time is that my organic brain state is the distortion of who I am. and to be really who I really am, to be able to live the most satisfying life and have the coolest emotions, like the full range of emotion, and to write good poetry and all that jazz, the medication is necessary. Because another question somebody asked me is if psychosis goes unmedicated, what happens? If you never medicate psychosis, does it burn itself out, or do you just go completely fucking crazy for the rest of your life? And experientially, my answer is I don't know, because my psychoses have always been stopped. The first overflowing of the soul, when I was 17, right after I tried to kill myself, I refused medication for 7 days. That was the longest I was legally allowed to. And it just ramped up, seriously up. I remember waking up one morning and feeling my mind go from the confluence of consciousness, or like going from a state of togetherness and then scattering in the instant I came to consciousness. So being asleep, my mind was more unified. And then the dissociative identity disorder, the first time I experienced myself in multiplicity was that same hospitalization when I when they shut the door and locked me in. I could feel my mind going into a bunch of different pieces in a way that I hadn't had prior to that experience, I don't think. But it was just like, oh, now I'm safe, now I can let go. And then everybody came out. And the first time that I was formally diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder, was about 5 years later at university. I heard a specialist talk, and I hunted him down afterwards and went to tell him my story and see if he thought that I had DID. And he said 99% of the people that I talk to don't have it, you have it. And these things that you call psychosis are really just these parts of you coming out, and you have not learned the skills of how to deal with them. And since there are only 2 of you on here, I don't know who you are, but since only 2 people have stuck around, there's a part of me that wants to say hi, and I have never done this on Facebook or on YouTube, but she wants to say hi. So I'm gonna let her. I'm gonna switch, which I do by rolling my eyes back in my head and relaxing my body as much as I can. That's how I let go of whoever's talking. And then I invite in whoever wants to be here. Another way of letting go of one person and switching intentionally is to step back. It's called, the person who's talking that's fronting, but to step back and let someone else take over. And then I like stretch my face to let that person in completely. So here we go. I'm gonna let you meet Sweet Pea because she really wants to meet you. There is wolfing. There's a wolfing. I see that it says 2 and it says 3 at the top of the screen, and there's red and it says 5. I just have a phone though, and there's squiggles. Hi, Drew. I see a little picture of my friend. I'm Sweet Pea. And I show you my room. This is where I am. This is my room. Hi, Drew. I wanted to meet you a long time ago. I wanted to meet you, but the whole system the whole system is that whole name is Finn is the person who fronts all the time, and so then Widow Finn with a will Fin, that's the name of the person that she met in the first. She calls it overflowing of the soul. That is when she met it, Widow Finn, Widow Fin, and that is where the name Big Fin and comes from. Is she didn't want to be like share. That's I know when you talk. All right. Sorry. She didn't want to attract a lot of attention, and so she just made a normal name. It's a boy name, but that doesn't matter because there's boys in here too. There's a boy named Xandel. Xandel has a spreadsheet brain, and Xandel is the CEO of the companies, and he's the one that puts all the squiggles and on the screen. And then I think she wants to come back again. So it's good to see you. I hope that I just have to say that if people are mean to, if people put little squiggles that make Finn sad because I talked, then I won't want to talk again. So I hide from people most of the time. I hide from people. But I am glad that I meted you, Drew, is when I see you again, then I will go like this. If I remember, I'll go like this, and that means that is me saying hi. All right, and then go back. I know what Finn talking at now. All right. Yeah. So that's like the most vulnerable thing in the entire world. What else did I have? How do you cope? Oh, I'm still on how I cope. Connection. That's the main thing. Texting people. I have a lot of resilience, and the key to resilience is self-compassion, and that's been hard for me to learn. Self-care and self-compassion, because I was incested and raped and tied down for 13 hours, but it all happened a long time ago. And so I get to a point where it's just like, what the fuck? Still? Like, I still completely melt down. Like, I still, when I make out with my husband, sometimes I get terrified and dissociate. And it has happened literally 1,000 times because we've been together for 24 years. 24 years. Another coping mechanism that I use a lot is travel. I go in 2.5 days. I take a plane to Istanbul, and from there, a 12-hour flight to Istanbul, and from there, a 6-hour flight to Tanzania. And I travel alone because a part of myself that I think of as my Zen traveler's hat comes out, who's just completely confident and relaxed, and all of my mental struggles are gone. And it's amazing, and I love it. And the reason is that I think I don't have to prove anything to myself when I'm traveling in a place I've never been, interacting with people I've never seen before and will never see again. And the whole point of it is to experience. I'm not holding myself to any expectation. I'm not failing myself in any way. So that's a coping mechanism. I sit in front of a happy light, tons of medication, happy light every morning. They don't cost much, like $40. And they work as well as a medication. I've been using it for about 15 years, maybe 20 now. and that helps me sleep. It regulates the circadian rhythm and makes your brain ready to, it releases the hormones necessary for your brain to be ready to wake up 23 hours after you look at it. And then that way you wake up without using an alarm, and you get tired when it's time to go to sleep, but your body doesn't put out it's not melatonin, I can't think of the word for what it is, but there's a neurotransmitter that people who have seasonal affective disorder, the neurotransmitter gets put out all day and it makes you sleepy all day. And so this regulates that. So I do my happy light, and I used to use drugs as a coping mechanism, and it works, but the price is too high. I used marijuana. It was part of our family medical budget because when I get really sad, I would just get high and then I wouldn't want to hurt myself. And it worked, but it ended up being all I wanted to do was get high. So I had this conviction that I wasn't going to be able to get through a day without being high, because that tractor beam of killing myself would be too strong for me to fight, and I would involuntarily break down and give into it, kill myself. So I smoked a lot of pot in order to not be overwhelmed by the constant stinging of my consciousness. That was like my distress tolerance technique, was being high all the time. So when I quit, it was super hard. It was super hard. It was super scary. And then it ended up being wonderful. But the problem is now there's nowhere to go. When I'm in a lot of pain, I have to choose that pain. Like, I have to select being in agony, because I know that if I use, then I'll fall right back into using. I own a company. There are 5 of us in it now, so I have 4 employees, and I get to travel around the world, and both of those are 100% because I'm clean. And I know that if I used, and I have really wanted to relapse, if I used, I wouldn't just do it on Friday nights like a chocolate bar or ice cream, like people who can actually use and not be addicts. I would throw my whole life to shit and glue myself into my basement and be stoned constantly, because it's suicide. I mean, using the way I used is functionally choosing delirium over life. And my kids become something I don't want, because they get in between. Mothering gets in between me and what I want to do, which is be utterly delirious, or whatever that word is. Gone. Just gone. So I resent my kids, and I don't enjoy parenting, and that's the parent my kids get. And I don't want that anymore, It's not worth it. So choosing pain is what I have to do, and I do it a lot. In the last year and a half, I've been hospitalized 4 times for nearly psychotic suicidality. Went through 4 months of electroconvulsive therapy, which is challenging to choose to suffer in order to stay clean, because that's how I can be here. That's how I can contribute what I'm here for. Let me see if there's any other questions. How do you come back to a shared reality? You medicate yourself back to the shared reality. Some medications that have worked really well for me are Zyprexa or olanzapine. I'm on 2.5 milligrams daily on that now. And then I ramp it way up, like 20 a day, for if I start to describe my mind as fragmenting, or if the translucencies start interrupting me, or if they get too bright, or if I get too emotionally involved with them. If my nervous system starts reacting to them as if they're real, then they qualify as hallucinations in my book. And then I'll definitely get as medicated as I can get. As soon as I feel that I am in danger, of myself, then I insist on going to a mental hospital because I hate the feeling of being in danger. And for as long as I identify as a mom, I won't hurt this body. No matter what agony I'm in, I won't hurt this body, because taking a blade to my arm is equivalent to taking a blade to my daughter's throat. Like, that's how I see it. If I were to hurt myself, they would figure it out instantly, and self-harm would become an acceptable coping strategy for their lives, which would be really, really terrible. So I know when to go to the hospital. If I flip out of my identity as a mother, when I'm in a terrible place where consciousness is stinging twice constantly and it's completely an act of self-harm to take another breath, then that's when I'm in danger. So when I want to hurt myself that badly, I do go to the hospital. And I definitely, if you are anywhere near there, call 988. If you're in the United States, 988 will hook you up with the nearest crisis response center and help take care of you. So I want to thank you guys for sticking with me. You did a great job. And I look forward to doing more of these in the future. Oh yeah, totally. Thank you, Kelson. It's a powerful motivator, having dependence to push through bodily pain and the stinging of consciousness, no question. And the bodily pain is another real motivator, because I go through a lot of really bad pain. They call it myofascial pain syndrome, which just means they can't figure out what it is. The fascia is the net that runs through the musculature of the entire body, and myo is pain. So myofascial just means that everything hurts. No, myo is not pain. But I could go back to my drug of choice in 5 minutes, literally. There's a dispensary 3 minutes from my house, and it would cost $10, and I could throw it all. And then I would just be giving up on life. But because I have my kids, that Arapaho saying, your children will save your life if you let them. Yeah, it's true. They'll give you a whole new life if you let them. Parenting is definitely the next level of the video game. They are love and connection are why I stay clean. And it is my hope, if you've gone through any of this, or if you know anyone who has gone through the things that I've described, that the people who are saying this will feel less alone, that a little bit of the stigma around, if you see someone on the street who's talking to things that aren't there, you don't need to be afraid. I mean, they're just a person like you, and their reality is different. If your reality were different, you would be acting in a different way. Do you feel like soul, mind, or body is directive, or does it often switch? And when you're in moments of a lot of pain, do you feel like your body becomes directive? The body, when I use it well, is a tool for staying grounded. So it's a tool for not letting the other halves of spirituality and cognition, as you say, the soul and mind, not letting myself fly away with them. So I am right here, right now. I'm in my feet. I can feel the clothing on my body. I keep myself in this deictic frame, or I get myself to return to where I actually am physically through the senses. And when you ask whether the soul, mind, or body is directive, I totally agree that that's the triplet of which our incarnation is composed. That's my experience of it too, and that it's a balancing act, that each of the three needs to serve the whole, and not super take over. When the translucencies get really bright, when I used to use, the translucencies would start conversations with me, and they would distract me from the objective reality. And they don't do that anymore since I stopped using. They'll still engage with me if I invite it, but they don't, I think, they almost don't ever, they catch my attention, but they don't invade my thoughts so they're not directive. I use cognition and intellectuality as a coping mechanism because that's where my identity is strongest. The I that would be talking from is Xander. That's the part of myself that is the spreadsheet brain and is very, very competent and very confident. Oh, bye, Drew. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'm gonna I'll ask you, Kel, do you have one more question for me? Because I'd love it if you do. I was intending to stop at 9. But if you have one more question, I'll wait 10 seconds for one more question, and then I'm gonna head out myself. I got a big day. Oh, he said, not at the moment. Thank you for all you do. Thank you guys for showing up. This was tons of fun. I'll see you next time. Do-do-do.